Hi, we are live. We are live. It is so good to be back. Oh my goodness. We have been super, super busy. Let us know you're here. I am Mother De La Morte, and this is the Horror Gallery. And we've got a really, really fun show for us, for everybody tonight. Not a whole lot of like visual material, and that's just because I do love the obscure. And these two stories that I have for you tonight, there's not a whole lot of information. And at least with the first one, you're going to find when you find obscure type of stories and things like that, that if it's based on something true, sometimes people have taken like it's like a fish story, and they've made a mountain out of a molehill basically, or it's just like really inaccurate information. So I went to a lot of my sources just to kind of get an overall feel for what the most accurate historical information is available before I put together this particular story for you. So there's just not, like I said, a whole lot of visual material. And what I did find in the visual material, maybe, except for one or two little things, just it didn't look real. It didn't look real. It looked like it may have been part of that fish story, so to speak. So we're going to go with just the story, which I think makes it just as good. And let your imagination, go with that, because sometimes the imagination can be much scarier than the visual. So very interesting story tonight. Let's see what's going on in the chats real quick, and then we're going to get to our house cleaning. And I also have a really, really fun announcement. Something additional. We just finished up with the Halloween costume contest. And again, congratulations, Kisa. I know you will be getting your first set of prizes here very, very soon. Your second half, which is the merch, she's getting a fantastic zip-up hoodie with our zodiacal Mr. Applewhite logo on it. So if you guys haven't seen our merch, go to our website and check out our merch store. We've got some really, really neat merchandise and really, really good quality. So she's getting that, and she's getting a mug. The order on that will be processed on the 15th of this month. So Kisa, if you're in the audience, it's going to be processed on the 15th. And I did see Mikey. Hi, Mikey. How are you? But let me see what's going on in the chats real quick. And then we'll get to that house cleaning. Oh my goodness, so we have a bunch of people here. Hello, Bridget. Hello, Stephen P. Kitty Cat. Hi, Liz. Hi, Ange. So glad you are here. Hi, Mikey. Oh my goodness. I am so glad to be back. I have missed you guys. Hi, Nadine. And then we have the mod from PBDC TV, as well as the mod from Channel 9 and Roots Bleed Red. Hello, everybody, and Psychomantium and Psycho Bunny DC. Hello, everyone. I am so glad to be back. I have missed everybody. I tell you what, life in the mundane world, I like it better here. I like it better here in the imagination. So it's much, much funner. So anyway, to get to some house cleaning, of course, like I always say, um, any type of channel or page that has a good organic following, and you guys are the absolute bestest of supporters, and we love you to death. But it's Facebook and you know, a lot of the other big social media sites, they've gotten to where they want you to play to pay. It all comes down to money. So what we like to do is we like to stick the finger to old Zuck and some of the other social media companies that we stream on, because we stream on multiple platforms when we do these shows. We like to determine who's going to see this. And so the best and most fabulous thing you can do to support us is to just simply share our content. Now, we do have other means. If you would like to, you know, tip us or, you know, do additional support, you can go to Ko-Fi or go to our website, and we do have Ko-Fi links on there if you want to do more, but those are not mandatory at all. We just appreciate you guys tuning in and being here, and I'm hoping you're enjoying everything that we're doing because we sure dig it. All right, so like, share, anybody you know that might, you know, find our content interesting. Also, make sure that if you haven't gone to our YouTube channel yet, go do that, subscribe, because sometimes Facebook is really random about sending out the notifications. Like, they have changed from just regularly like get notifications on streams and things like that to where they want you to follow and then set up your follow as like favorites and things like that. So they've made it a little bit more complicated. And from time to time, I've noticed they've gone through and kind of like reset everybody's stuff. So there's been, you know, several times I've had to go in and like reset my stuff on different things that I follow. So, you know, make sure your stuff that you're, you know, hitting that follow button and all the, you know, doing all the things. But go to our YouTube, because their procedures have always been pretty much the same. You subscribe, and that sets you up for the notifications, and it's just pretty simple. You can also go to our website, and you can subscribe to our YouTube page directly from our websites. So that's pretty cool. We've got those widgets and hyperlinks set up for you. So let's see, that, and that. And then also, so I know it's just the 1st of November, but Christmas is fast approaching. I know it does not feel that way, but it is. It'll be here before we know it. Now, what we're wanting to do this year is and we've kind of done it in the past, but we're really wanting to push it this year because we had such a good like turnout for our Halloween costume contest. Is we're going to be doing, and it may be more than one, but I know for sure we're going to be doing one special episode this December, which is our Victorian Masquerade ghost story stream. And we would really, really love for all you supporters out there, if you've got like a traditional ghost story that you really, really love, or, you know, a ghost story from a particular author that you really, really love, or if you have like some sort of creepy, you know, like paranormal experience. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you for sharing. Paranormal experience you would like to share that would kind of fit in with a genre of like a ghost story or just something that's uber creepy. We are taking submissions. There is a link on both our websites, both Psychomantium and PBDC, or psychobunnydc.com. You can submit that story. We would like to include your name, but that's not necessary if you don't feel comfortable attaching your name to the story. We'll just, if it doesn't have a name, it's going to be considered anonymous. But if you want to get in on that and have your story or experience read live during our Victorian Ghost Stories stream, please go ahead and start submissions. It takes a little while to get all that stuff together. And so we're going ahead and starting it now. The cutoff date is December 15th. So if you can get that in before December 15th would be amazing. It's going to be a really fun show. And we might have some special characters that show up. You know, you never know what we're going to be up to. So, all right, with that out of the way, we're going to get to this particular story. But I see a buttload of comments in the feed. So I'm going to check the comments real quick, and then we're going to get to the story. Hi, Aka. And then Christopher or Mikey is asking, where have you been, you wild Winnebago? And so Bridget says, she has amazing news. I am walking for the first time in 6 years. No more wheelchair. I am so happy for you, Bridget. That is absolutely amazing. We are so happy for you. All right. See, all of y'all are just so friendly. I just love you guys to death. Just having really great conversations in there and telling everybody hi. Okay, let's see. Well, there. All right, so, all right. In April of 1922, in the small rural settlement of Goes la Ledoux, and I'm probably going to butcher some of this French. This is east of Brest in Brittany, France. 2-year-old Pauline Pritchard was out playing with her sister when she seemingly wandered off. Pauline's disappearance was not immediately apparent until the children were called in for supper. It was then that the family realized that little Pauline was missing. And this is a very sad story. A full-scale search was undertaken by the local authorities, but nothing was found of little Pauline or what may have befallen the child. After several weeks and the family losing hope of finding Pauline alive, news arrived that a child had been found nearly 200 miles away in the city of Cherbourg in Normandy, matching Pauline's description. The child had been found by the local police, lost and confused and wandering through the alleyways. When an officer showed a photo of the child to Pauline's mother, she cried with joy. Her daughter had been found, and on May 8th, the family drove the nearly 200 miles north to collect little Pauline and bring her home. The child the Pritchards met in Cherbourg was thinner than Pauline had been, but being she had been missing for a number of weeks, police and the Picards put this down to weight loss. Though the child remained strangely mute, things went relatively well, and in spite of her peculiar behaviors, that is, of course, until the body of a young female child was found less than 1/2 mile from the family's home. So join me tonight for the peculiar disappearance of Pauline Picard. Now, Goes-à-Ledoux is a rural town in the outskirts of France, which boasts breathtaking views of the world's most beautiful country landscape. The picturesque town is the epitome of old French culture, with its vintage shops and cafes dating back hundreds of years. With the port city of Brest to the west, Brest is a port city to the Fur-and-Stern department in Brittany. Located in a sheltered bay not far from the west tip of the peninsula, the western extremity of a metropolitan France. Brest is an important harbor and the second French military port after Toulon. In 1917, during the First World War, Brest was used as the disembarking port for many of the troops coming from the United States. Thousands of such men came through the port on their way to the front lines. The United States Navy established a Navy air station on the 13th of February of 1918 to operate seaplanes. The base closed shortly after the Armistice of 11th November of 1918. Now, Brittany has a rugged and wild coastline of almost 1,700 miles that hugs the English Channel and the Atlantic Ocean. Brittany mostly consists of beautiful, medieval, sandy beaches, prehistoric monoliths, and untouched nature. Unusually, the native language, however, is Breton or Breton, which takes its roots from its Celtic kind of like mother tongue and has some similarities with the Welsh and Cornish languages in the UK. Now, many settlements in the Goes-la-Ledoux area often consist of only one home or farm, and agriculture is the prominent means of living, even to this day. So to say it is rural is an understatement. Now, in 1922, the farmhouse, quiet, unusually safe area, was owned by Francois Picard, and a farmer, and his wife and their 9 children. The farm life in the area could often be unforgiving, with its stony soil, wolves also often threatening the livestock, and the landscape could be unforgiving in bad weather. The family farm was modest, and the entire family, including the children, helped with the daily operations of farm life. On April 16th of 1922, to the second to the youngest child, which would have been Pauline Picard, 2 years old, was recorded out in the lawn with her other siblings. The father, Francois Picard, stated that he saw little Pauline around 4:20 p.m. as she went with her older sisters to tend the horses in a nearby field. But upon returning home later that evening, Pauline was missing. Terrified, the Picard parents sent for the local authorities to organize a search of the area. As the weather had took a turn for the worst, the temperature dropped as a storm was blowing in from the coast. Sadly, the weather hampered efforts, and the search was postponed until the next day. On April 7th, the search was underway, consisting of over 150 local volunteers, police, the local parishioner, as well as trained hunting dogs. But not a trace was found of little Pauline. Police then turned their suspicions to possible suspects. Early in the investigation, suspicion fell on a man called Cameron. He was an umbrella salesman. He worked as a farmhand for the Picards and had been invited to breakfast the day of Pauline's disappearance. He was said to cuddle her a lot and had been heard telling Pauline twice that he'd find her a good home near another town, which does bring up some questions that we'll kind of get into a little bit later. Now, around 1 p.m. on the day of the disappearance, he was left alone with Pauline and was overheard telling her that she was going with him. With the search for Pauline winding down and still no trace of the child being found, locals were starting to fear the worst. Had she fell victim to the weather from the night before, or worse, animal attack, as wild boar had been known to roam the area? Eventually, it was thought Pauline had, in fact, been eaten, as nothing could be found of her. Now, police followed the path Cameron would have taken to leave town. Eventually, catching up with him, it was decided he couldn't have committed the crime based on the timing, and that Cameron had an alibi that checked out during the time that Pauline went missing. Police were quickly finding, with all efforts exhausted, they had hit a dead end. So let's see what's going on in the comments real quick, and then we'll get back to it. Who's gonna make them suspicious? What? Shh. All right, let's see. Let me go. Good gracious, you guys have been chatty. All right, let's see where I left off. And Mikey said, nah, she was probably hiding from Grossman. Oh my goodness. And I have got to tell you, I have been in touch, as aggravating as it can be, with the BOC. And boy, do they have a doozy for you guys tomorrow. Oh my word. And then Mikey says, be afraid of the BOC. They have a lot of power. They do, for such little cuddly, I shouldn't say cuddly, for terrifying bunnies. They wield a lot of power. And then Ange says, I had McDonald's for dinner. And then Aaron says, darkest greetings, odd mother. Hello, Aaron. So glad you are here. All right, let's see. Yeah, go back out, Mikey. So Mikey is saying that his phone's acting glitchy. Mine was doing that last night during Aka and Hexus's, or I'm sorry, uh, Liz and Frank's feed. And I had to keep going back and going out and coming back in. So it's Facebook. All right, and let's see. Stephen P. Kitty Cat says Helen at PBDC TV headquarters is already getting calls from the French embassy. They're offended by your mispronunciation. Yes, I always butcher French, and there are several others that I butcher on a regular basis. So they're just going to have to suck it. Let's see. Mikey says, see, I'm getting great visual, but sound is like a broken 45. I'm so sorry. All right, let's see. Yes, monoliths. It's a beautiful area, very craggy, British. I mean, not British, but just very. It's rough terrain. Like you have to be rugged to live in some of these areas. They are not for the meek, though beautiful. They are not for the meek. And then Ange says, "I'm part British." And then Mikey says, y'all remember last year, the whole monolith craze? God, was that only a year ago? It seems like it was forever ago. And then Ange says, I want to visit Stonehenge. Hello, Ronald. Let's see. And then Stephen P. Kitty Cat says, his name is Crimson Meerkat, and he's going to be a fixture on my show for the rest of the season. Awesome. Yes, and Liz says they didn't let the demon and the Winnebago take over last night. Yeah, I noticed that. But we loved having you guys back. We loved having you guys back. And I think I kind of clipped my camera just a little bit. There we go. All right. If I can quit tugging on it. There we go. All right. So where were we? So the police were quickly finding, with all efforts exhausted, that they had hit a dead end. That is, of course, when a few weeks later, news arrived from the local authorities that a child had been found nearly 200 miles away in the city of Cherbourg in Normandy, matching Pauline's description. Yes, they did. So you keep Liz and Frank locked in a container or a trunk? Is that what you said, Aka? Oh, in a closet. Oh, my word. Poor Liz and Frank. Poor Liz and Frank. Now, the suspected child had been picked up by the Cherbourg authorities and taken to a local orphanage after being found wandering in the back alleys of the city in a state of confusion. The police presented a picture to the Picards of the child, and though thinner, both agreed she bore a close resemblance to Pauline. The next day, on May 8, 1922, the Picards, as well as the local police, traveled to Cherbourg to identify the child. Upon meeting the child, the Picards were unsure if it was in fact little Pauline. However, reassured by police that this had to be Pauline, though thinner, it was reasoned that it must be due to weight loss, as no one was really sure exactly where Pauline had been over the last few weeks. She appeared well looked after, and her clothing, though different to that she had been wearing when she left the farm, was in good condition. Strangely, the child remained mute when reintroduced to her family and showed no sign of happiness to see her family again. As her parents spoke to her, it became clear that she also did not understand the language, Breton, at all. There were so many questions. How had Pauline traveled almost 200 miles? What had happened to her? And why did she seem to have no memory of her family? And why did she not understand her mother tongue? The last two questions were put down to amnesia, brought on by post-traumatic stress. The parents became convinced the girl was in fact Pauline after spending a few days with her. When asked if they were sure, the father replied that of course, she has the same hair and the same blue eyes. All agreed sending her home with the Picards would, in hopes that her surroundings would spark the memory and get her to talking. The hope was that this girl was just traumatized and malnourished and that she quickly would recover. On the way home, the girl was said to have spoken 3 words in Breton on the train. And upon returning to the farm in Goas-la-Ladue, the little girl's siblings immediately recognized her as Pauline, and the family as a whole seemed to have no doubts as to the girl's identity. The girl was said to be asking for bread and calling the family cat in the local language. And despite not recognizing her family, the entire neighborhood recognized her. However, just weeks after returning home, the Picards began to suspect the girl was not actually their daughter. During this period, another local farmer, a gentleman by the name of Ives Martin, asked the parents point blank if they had thought the girl was truly their daughter before Pauline, entering the room, exclaimed, "God help me, I am guilty," and left abruptly. The next day, he was committed to an insane asylum in such a state that police were unable to interrogate him. Although this story seems to imply that he had a breakdown due to guilt over Pauline's death, the media later reported that he suffered a traumatic brain injury sometime in the months prior to his dramatic announcement. Though Pauline was still exhibiting odd behavior, eventually life at the farm returned to normal. That is, until late May. On May 27th, the Le Petit Parisien reported that a cyclist had found the body of a little girl only half a mile from the Picard's farm. The body was damaged, brutally disfigured, and decaying past the point of identification, as well as the hands, feet, and head were missing. Next to the body were neatly folded clothes. Pauline's mother indicated that the clothes were, in fact, the ones Pauline had on when she disappeared. While police and the Picards agreed that the body must be Pauline's, they were no closer to understanding her fate. Upon a cursory search of the area, they also located and found a naked human skull. Absence of any flesh was also found not far from the body. Interestingly, the body was in a place that investigators searched multiple times during the initial investigation of Pauline Picard's disappearance. Residents also indicated that this area was frequently traveled and that they had passed that exact spot numerous times and had never seen a body or a skull there. They speculated that someone must have placed the body there rather recently. Now, an examination of the remains was performed. However, medical examiners could not decide whether the girl had died due to violence, animals, or the elements. They eventually concluded Pauline had wandered away, perhaps during a tantrum, and had frozen to death in the storm. Now, marks on the bones were surmised that basically they could have been either cuts or bite marks from scavengers. Now, again, we're talking 1922, so the forensics is not going to be as, like well or as good as they are now. Now, like I said, the cut marks could have been from scavengers. Now, her stomach could have been empty because she either A, starved to death outside, which if she died in the storm would not make a lot of sense unless the child had not eaten in a long time, or because her captors didn't feed her. But how her body appeared in the area searched, and I quote, "so well that if someone had lost a wallet, it would have been found." Now, these were in the words of a local priest, could not be explained. 12 locals, including some police, continued to suspect homicide, pointing out that it was unlikely for animals to eat the head and the extremities before eating the abdomen, as that being a body part often eaten first by scavengers. So they normally go for the soft stuff. Things took an even more bizarre turn when the autopsy on the skull found near the body was found to be too large to have belonged to the young girl they had discovered. In fact, the skull didn't even belong to a woman or a girl. The skull itself was identified as a full-grown male, but an unidentified full-grown male. This opened the case even wider. Now there were two victims with a kidnapper and a potential murderer still on the loose somewhere in the area. Now, ultimately and tragically, no conclusion could be reached in the case that seemed to have a never-ending list of questions. Was the hysterical man who questioned Pauline's parents her killer? And who then were the parents of the girl from Nuremberg? And how could the Picards have so grossly misidentified her? Sadly, no answers could be found. In fact, even with the Picards' identification of her clothes, there was still no real evidence or proof that the body found on their property was actually Pauline's. Following the discovery of Pauline's body, the big question was, who was this girl from Nuremberg that they had been caring for? The Picard family quietly decided that the Nuremberg girl wasn't Pauline. The whole thing seemed too far-fetched, especially now that the girl seemed younger than Pauline. She was given the name Marie-Louise Pauline and sent back to Nuremberg, where she was entrusted to the care of the Franciscan Sisters of Notre Dame Notre Dame Vue. She passed away in the care of the sisters during the 1924 measles epidemic. The Picards spent the rest of their days with the mystery of their daughter's fate. They buried the dead girl's remains in the local cemetery under the name Pauline Picard. Later, her parents were buried with her. Her death date is listed as April 6, 1922, which was the day that she disappeared. It is possible that answers lie in the strange emotions of grief and mourning. After all, Mrs. Picard could have very well simply wished too hard that the Nuremberg girl was her daughter and found herself willing to ignore the obvious holes in that theory. Ives Martin is still considered the prime suspect by many, though his ultimate fate after entering the asylum was never known. As for the most mysterious part of this, the skull, it has never been identified, and no missing men were postulated or reported as possible identities. Today, most accept at this point the body located on the property was in fact Pauline's. The identity of the owner of the disembodied head remains a mystery. And as for the strange doppelganger from Nuremberg, she too has been lost to the pages of history. Now, before you get too comfortable, this is not the only time in history that mistaken identity and an apparent amnesia of both native language and family has baffled the public. Anna Anderson, ironically during the same year, 1922, was identified as the missing Grand Duchess Anastasia. As well, odd case and disappearance, and we're going to cover this eventually, of Bobby Dunbar. That is a very interesting case. So, let's see. I hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of information out there about poor little Pauline, but I find it a very interesting story. You can further research that. You may not find a whole lot more, but I hope you do. I hope you do. But let's see what's going on in the comments, and then we're going to take a short commercial break and get to our second story, which is the twice hanged man. All right, so Liz is having things in Spanish there. Pork, the other white meat. And Frank is, hi Frank. Frank is listening while he drives home. Hold on, I have got crypt dust in my throat. Hang on just a second. And Anne says, tasty. And then Frank says, I want your skull. I need your skull. Whoa. And then Maud at Psychomantium 13 says, yes, they go for the tender bits first. They do. And there is a picture out there of the body, but I'll be very honest with you. The reason that I didn't include it here, not only for one, it was pretty grotesque, but for another, it honestly didn't look real. Now, I think that there are some marshy areas in that area, and they could be bogs, but it looked more like a bog body than it did like a human child that had only been missing like a couple of months. And it almost looked like it could have been like something made of straw too. It didn't look real. And if it did look real, I'd say it looked more like a bog body, to be very honest with you. All right, let's see. And then Stephen P. Kitty Cat says, so desperate to find your child that you convince yourself it's her. And like I said, it's not the first time that this has happened, but you can understand the grief. You can understand how, that might affect people's judgment, most definitely. And then Nadine says, how do they not recognize that it wasn't their child? They got someone else's kid. Well, and the really odd and bizarre thing about it, Nadine, is they said that once this other child was returned to the orphanage, she actually did start to speak Britain or Breton. So, you don't know. You really don't. Could that have actually been Pauline? There's just so many what ifs there. And then you've got to think to yourself, now I get, you had to have big families back then. And 9 kids are a lot. And I understand with 9 children and working a farm, you're going to rely on the older children to help pick up some of the slack. But it does bear the question that, first of all, why was the body of supposedly Pauline that was found, why was the stomach empty? And it kind of, harkens kind of the whole real story behind Hansel and Gretel and how it was fairly common practice, maybe not so much in 1922, but now you've got to understand that these areas were very rural, just like in some parts of like Romania and places like that. Like they're still using carts and buggies. Okay. So who's to say that some of the way that they saw life wasn't more similar to, say, more like medieval thought? Because like we treasure our children. And I'm not saying that they didn't back then, but it was a little bit different. Death was something that was very like common, especially with children. Like you were lucky if your child made it to 5 without being struck down by some sort of mishap or disease or malnourishment or something like that, or rickets, from malnourishment. So, was it the fact that they just couldn't feed all their children? Was it the fact that they were just so heartbroken they were willing to grasp at straws? Was it the fact that something may have happened to the child and they tried to hide her death? Was it the fact that I'm just asking myself, the parents, at least in the stories that there are out there, and again, there's not a whole lot of information, they really didn't seem to know their youngest children, if that makes any sense. Now, I'm not passing judgment. I'm just saying, based on the information, it's a logical question. It's a logical question. So, but great question, Nadine. I know I kind of went off on a tangent with that. Hi, Joshua. Let's see. And Stephen P. Kitty Cat says, I vaguely remember watching that one that one, but I don't remember anything about it. Bog butter? Oh yes, I would try bog butter. I'm sorry. Like there's some nasty looking bog butter, especially the ones that really could turn out not to be bog butter and actually just like really rotten sheep that fell in a bog and turned like the fat just turned into a ball. No, but there's some that are obviously bog butter and they look delicious. Like I would so try it. I would so try it. And then Ange says, has anyone seen the movie The Crooked Man? No, I have not. All right. Okay, so let me stop my ramblings for a moment. And we're going to take a quick commercial break because this next story is not really that long. And we'll be right back.
This is Mikey from Out of the Ordinary, and you're watching PBDC TV.
First thing in the morning, when I'm listening to music and getting a little bit of time for some creepy research, I'm always representing with my PBDC merch. What a better way to have a cup of coffee in the morning.
Don't forget to check out our other cool merch at rootsbleedred.com. That's rootsbleedred.com.
This is Professor Edgar Fluffosaurus from Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat, and when I'm not hosting Monster Chat or knocking down small Japanese cities, I'm watching PBDC TV. Now back to the show.
And we're back. All right. So now we're going to get to the story of the twice hanged man. So this is an interesting one. This one goes way back. We're going to take a trip. Take a trip way
The bunnies of chaos are coming for you.
The bunnies of chaos are coming for you.
Good morning!
Well, maybe not that kind of trip. Darn bunnies. Jinx, I've been jinxed again. All right, so anyway, we're going to go back to, it looks like it's going to be, what that would be, the 13th century. I still have to calculate it that way. So somewhere around the 13th century, 14th century, somewhere around in there. All right, so the twice hanged man. Now, William Craig, also known as William the Scabby, he was born in 1262 and died sometime after 1307. He was a medieval Welsh warrior, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to totally butcher these words, and supporter of the Rhys ap Mardud, Lord of the lands of Ystard Tywin, in his rebellion against King Edward I of England. Now, captured in 1290 by the son of William de Bracy, the Cambro-Norman Lord of Gower, he was tried and found guilty of killing 13 men. Craig was hanged just outside Swansea, within sight of the de Bracy Swansea Castle. Or Swansea, I'm sorry, Swansea Castle. And he was hanged twice, as the gallows collapsed during his first hanging. Lady Mary de Bracy interceded on Craig's behalf and prayed to the deceased Bishop of Hereford, a Thomas de Canteleu, requesting to him to ask God to bring Craig back from the dead. And this raises many questions. I have many questions here. Now, I know that it was the duty of the Queen to often intercede as kind of a pardon or a mercy. But she was very, very persistent concerning William the Scabby, which I just don't know. Now, Craig began to show signs of life the day after his execution, and over the sequential few weeks made a full recovery, living at least another 18 years. The main primary source of Craig's story is the record of the investigation into the canonization of Thomas de Canteleu, which is held in the Vatican Library. I would love to see the Vatican basement. Now, Craig's resurrection, it is still balmy in here, even though it's fairly cool outside. Now, Craig's resurrection was one of 38 miracles presented to the papal commissioner, who in 1307 were charged with examining the evidence of Canteleu's saintness. Now, the hanged man himself gave evidence to the commission, after which nothing more is known of him. Now, Canteleu was formally canonized by Pope John the 22nd, is that right? On the 17th April of 1320. Now, William Craig was born in about 1262, like I said, in the Welsh parish of, Lord have mercy, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. It's Llanrhidian, Gower, to Rhys ap Gwilymr and his wife Swaneth. Now, in 1282 and in 1283, King Edward I of England waged a military campaign in Wales that ended with his annexation of the country. One of Edward's allies, Rhys ap Mardud, found the post-war settlement unsatisfactory and launched a rebellion against the king in 1287. Edward's vastly superior force soon crushed the uprising by Rhys ap Mardud and remained at liberty until his capture and execution in 1292. Now, Craig probably took part in the rebellion on the Welsh side. He was apprehended in 1290 by the son of William de Bracy, the Lord of Gower, who was defending his father's lands against the incursion by the rebels still at large. Craig was one of 14 prisoners captured by De Brozy, 12 of whom were sequentially released. Now, De Brozy did not like Craig. Craig was taken to Swansea Castle, where he was held in the dungeon awaiting trial, accused of killing 13 men. The law of Wales at the time permitted condemned men to atone for their crimes by making payment to their victims. Craig's friends and family rallied around to offer 100 cows to the De Brozys for his release, but the offer was refused. The sequential scale of the proposed compensation indicates that Craig was an important man. And although some witnesses describe him as a thief rather than a rebel, historians do believe or suggest that De Brozy's refusal to accept the offer strengthens the case for Craig being a rebel, as there is no other convincing reason to explain why he should have opted to decline good income just to hang a thief. Now, Craig pleaded innocent of the charges against him, but he was found guilty and sentenced to be hanged. Craig was hanged on a hill about a quarter-mile outside of Swansea, in sight of the De Brozy Swansea Castle, on Monday, the 27th of November of 1290. He was executed along with another malefactor, and I'm going to butcher this, Taraharun ap Howell. Although the latter was dealt with by the town executioner, Craig was hanged by one of his own relatives, the relative who was forced into that service by De Brozy. Could you imagine being forced to have to hang a member of your own family? That's awful. Now, Tahern ap Howell was a large and powerful man who struggled a great deal as he was hauled up from the ground by his neck. Because understand, back then, they did not have like the little doors that would fall out and, and the person would drop and breaking their neck, and the 13 knots that would, cause instantaneous death. No, you strangled to death. And sometimes it took a really long time if you had a thick neck. It was not pleasant. Okay. So, where were we at? All right. So this Harthuran chap was a large and powerful man who struggled to get a great deal as he was hauled up from the ground by his neck, causing the crossbeam of the gallows to break. Although the executioner, a gentleman by the name of John of Bagham, considered both men to already be dead when they fell to the ground, they were nevertheless hanged again. Now, this was done as an insult to their kin, and because it was usually custom that hanged men could not be removed from the gallows without the Lord's permission. The execution took place early in the morning, and the two men were left swinging from the gallows. Now, John Bagham reported that he cut down Craig's body at around 4 p.m. So he'd been hanging there for hours, and sent it into the town at the request of William De Brozy's wife, Lady Mary. It is unclear what became of the other chap, this Terhern, but it is most likely that his body may have been buried somewhere near the gallows. The younger William De Brozy visited the house in Swansea to which Craig's corpse had been taken that evening, and what he saw convinced him that Craig was dead. And I quote, his, speaking of Craig, face was black and all parts bloody or stained with blood. His eyes had come out of their sockets and hung outside the eyelids, and the sockets were filled with blood. His mouth, neck, throat, and the parts around them, and also his nostrils were filled with blood, so that it is impossible in the natural course of things for him to breathe. His tongue hung out of his mouth the length of a man's finger, and it was completely black and swollen, and as thick with blood as a stick to it that seemed the size of a man's two fists together. So his tongue was huge. Now, witnesses reported that Craig had voided his bowels and bladder while hanging from the gallows, which was considered at that time to be a sign of death. Now, historians have commented that one of the largest uncertainties in the whole story of the death and resurrection of William Craig is why Lady Mary de Brozy interceded for him, but intercede she did. John Bagham, then questioned about her motives 18 years after the event, could only reply that Lady Mary had sought the body of this William, and he did not know why. Before the execution, she had asked her husband to spare the two condemned men, but he refused. Then, on hearing that the Terran dude or chap was dead, and believing that Craig was still alive, she once again asked that he be handed over to her, but de Brozy delayed until he was convinced Craig was also dead. Then, I quote, he granted him, Craig, to the said lady, such as he was, and ordered him to be taken down from the gallows. Lady Mary had a special devotion to Thomas de Cantilupe, the deceased bishop of Hereford, and in her own words, upon hearing of Craig's death, and I quote, on bent knee she asked St. Thomas de Cantilupe to ask God to restore life to William Craig. Now, Cantilupe had died in Italy on the 25th of August of 1282. His flesh was buried in that country after having been boiled from his bones, which were taken back to England. Now, Cantilupe's tomb at Hereford Chapel, or Cathedral, soon became the center of a pilgrim cult, and miracles began to be attributed to him. Lady Mary sent one of her ladies-in-waiting to measure Craig's body with the length of thread, which was a thing that they used to do. All right. Now, this implied a promise to offer to the saint that a candle, the length of the person on whose behalf the saint was being asked to intercede, should be intercession be successful, a common practice during the medieval period. So basically what they would do is they would take a string and they would measure the length of the body, okay? And if you were going to use that string to pray to a particular saint for whatever it was that you were going to do, you would have a candle made the length of that string, okay? The length of the man's body, or person's body, I should say. And then that would be burnt kind of as an offering, when you're, actually asking the saint for some sort of blessing or miracle or something along those lines. Now, Craig's recovery began the day after his hanging, but it was some time, one witness says 15 days, before he was able to stand upright. That he did not recover more quickly casts doubt on the validity of the miracle, as miracles were supposed to be immediate, but partial miracles could be explained by the lukewarm faith of those who had made the vow. Once sufficiently recovered, Craig was summoned to appear at Swansea Castle before Lord and Lady de Brozy. The chaplain, William of Coniston, was also present. Craig explained with great fear and apprehension, according to the chaplain, that he was being taken to the gallows. Yet again, he prayed to Thomas de Cantilupe to save him. His fear resulted from his concern, and understandably so, that he might be executed again, and he had good reason to be worried. Though those who survived were usually pardoned, it was not unknown for them to be hanged again. Between the time of his hanging and his disappearance at the castle, and his appearance at the castle, Craig may have convinced himself that he had been saved by Cantilupe, or he may have simply have decided it would be prudent for him to go along with the story for his own safety. Craig went on to claim that he was hanged from the gallows, or that when he was hanged from the gallows, a bishop dressed in all white appeared and saved him by supporting his feet although he did not identify the bishop in his vision as that of Thomas de Cantelou. Once he was sufficiently recovered, Craig undertook a pilgrimage to Hereford, accompanied by Lord and Lady de Brosie, to thank Cantelou for restoring his life. He walked barefoot on the 3-day trip, wearing the rope that he had been hanged with around his neck. The rope itself was left at Cantelou's shrine, after which Craig said he would make a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, although there is some doubt whether he actually left Wales. Now, historians have suggested that Craig may have invented the pilgrimage story to basically escape from his companions. Now, nothing more is known of Craig after his testimony to the Papal Commission in 1307. 38 posthumous miracles attributed to Thomas de Cantelou were examined by the commissioners and submitted for consideration to the Pope and his advisors. 12 were rejected after further analysis, including Craig's resurrection, but no reasons were recorded as to why. Now, Pope John the 22nd, I believe, formally announced Cantelou's canonization on the 17th of April of 1320, 38 years after the new saint's death. And that is the story of the twice-hanged man. So like I said, it's a quick story, not a whole lot of information. There's a couple of really good texts out there, but they're kind of buried in other like medieval scriptures and things like that. A lot of things will be found in like footnotes too of a lot of these tombs and things like that, or these books. So you kind of have to dig for it, but I thought it was kind of a neat story to kind of end this with. So let me see what's going on with the comments, and then I will be saying adieu, and we'll see you next time. So let's see what's going on in the comments real quick. All right, let's see. Get back to where we were. Ma! Chicken feet dead lady! Those damn bunnies. Did I say duty? Duty. Stephen P. Kitty Cat says, that's naked bigotry against skinny people. Now look, I am a corpse, so I am pretty darn skinny. And then Mikey says, let's canonize Odd Mother, and she will now be known as Saint Mother De La Morte. Oh my word. Oh my word. I don't think anybody's going to be canonizing me. Trust me. And then Nadine says, dude was so hung, it brought him back to life. I guess. I don't know. And then Nadine says, corpse grinder's neck would never let him die that way. And then Joshua says, Epstein didn't kill himself. And then Mikey said, so he was Captain Howdy. I don't know. Oh, and then Stephen P. Kitty Cat said, this meeting with the Pope is not going well. What do I do? Wait, I've got it. Sorry. Akash says, I see Brandon is a fan of history then. Let's go, Brandon. And then Stephen P. Kitty Cat says these stories need more boobies. Or twice baked potatoes. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You guys are a hoot. You guys are a hoot. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, I've got some other projects kind of going on. So I know that I'm kind of just like all over the place, but it's probably going to be like this for a while. But I will see you. I will see you again soon. Hopefully it's within 7 days. We shall see. And we'll be bringing you something else. I haven't figured out yet what I'll be doing. But again, don't forget Eating Sunday tomorrow. And Eating Sunday is just so much fun. So you'll have a Ka and Hexus tomorrow, as well as Mr. Ghoul. And like I said, unfortunately, I have been in touch with the BOC. They're braggarts. They really are. They are braggarts. And boy, do they have a doozy for you guys tomorrow night. So, and then don't forget, Monday night, we have Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. Then on Tuesday, we have Out of the Ordinary with our Mikey. And then let's see, don't know what's going to be going on later in the week. I might pop in sometime later in the week. We'll see. And then, of course, Friday, we'll have either a Con Hexus, or if Frank and Liz are lucky enough to be let out of the closet, they'll be back next Friday. So you guys have a wonderful week. It was so good to be back. I'm so glad to be back. And I will see you next time. Pleasant nightmares. Bye.
It's that time, kids. Hold on to your heads. Join Psychomantium 13. Each week for thrills, chills, and a horrific good time. Don't lose your heads. Join Psychomantium 13 and enter the weird.